and welcome to another video with the Hungry Hornet. Look at that. Today's video is a rider tip video. Yes, that's right. Not just me bumbling on about nonsense for 10 minutes. This video is actually serves a purpose, and funny enough, look at this, what we're doing right now. Cornering, yay! Just rider tip really. How do I, the Hungry Hornet, take a corner? Well, I'll show you, like that. So if you look carefully at your screen, you can see the best way that I feel to take corners on a big old beefy bike is to not necessarily do the racing line. Imagine there's an invisible line in front of you right now. The idea for a safe corner is to sweep it, in my opinion. And so as a new rider, I was continuously taught to stay in a certain position. So you got your position 1, position 2, which is in the middle here, and position 3, which is just over there. During your dash, you'll learn there's actually 5 positions: 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. It's basically like a variation of in between. And what you learn when you start doing a little bit more advanced riding is that all of that's a bit nonsense, to be fair. So what you really need to be concentrating on is your point of view. How much can you see? How much can you around the corner? Obviously we ain't got x-ray vision, have we? We haven't. So it's basically how much of the corner can you see, how much of the hazard nearby can you see. And you'll find that when you're taking corners and you're using your points of vision, you're using the best view you can get of the corner, it'll allow you to take it at an arching angle, like a sort of, and you'll be able to sort of probably go knee down and stuff like that. So the idea is, let's say, right, we're coming up here to, looks like a left-hander, yeah, so you'd start to swerve or go just over here into position 3, and you've got enough room and enough vision that people oncoming can see you, and you can also just see around the corner like that. See, now if you took it flush, I'll try and take a corner flush in a sec. We'll get, well, you ain't got any corners coming up, unfortunately, but the idea is if you take it flush, you won't be able to see. You'll be sort of limiting your viewpoint. And then obviously the idea is you can get someone coming, you know, a cyclist or someone walking, you can sort of smash into them. So let's say you took it sort of flush, we're blind, you know, let's say you took the corner like this one here. This is a bit of a corner. This isn't the best way to take it, unfortunately, but as you can see, it limits your point. Now let's say you want to take this corner like that. Look how much you can see versus taking it like this. But you don't want to do that because it limits your point. So you want to be able to see the maximum amount of scope around a corner. It was taught on Bike Safe really, but I already knew about this beforehand because something that I sort of like looked at videos, and I know the IAMS road sort of training gives you all this sort of information. It's all about making yourself less of a hazard, and also giving you enough time to react to a hazard. So you'll find that when you're swooping on corners, or you'll find when you're taking corners, you'll just start to swoop them naturally like this. So you're constantly changing your positioning, so you're not just in position 2. You're not just doing position 2, you're not just like that, you know. You can do that, do this right here where you're just like, this is how I'm going to take a corner, yes, like that, as straight as I can. It works, don't get me wrong, it does work, but you want to sort of swoop out like this for your best sort of viewpoint of the road ahead. If I had the editing skills, I'd show you what I mean with some lines and stuff, but I don't, and I don't have the time. It takes me ages to do these videos as it is. This is just, well, I just thought it'd be an interesting little video. Like, I don't really do many tips. I did a video before on, like, you know, coming from a big bike, small bike to a big bike. This is in the same sort of line. It's like the same idea is, it's like, you know, riding a motorcycle, you're always learning, aren't you? You're never not learning. I think as a motorist, you always want to know new tips and tricks for people that have done, you know, miles and miles in different sort of, you know, conditions, track miles, all that sort of stuff, you know. Obviously, if you're, you know, a racer, you'll take the racing line 9 times out of 10, and but that's not always the best line. We're basically hugging corners, you know. I mean, sometimes I'll take a corner like this, which is probably the worst way you can definitely take a corner, because you're sort of crouching over onto the other side, you know. So, but you know, now we're going into a left bend, you do this. So you got, the idea is you got enough vision so you can see the parked car, you can see the oncoming traffic. You know, you got another left bend coming up here, and you could easily take a corner like this, where you're like that, you know, and they're not great. Yeah, it's good for your sort of like getting knee down and whatnot, but is it the most efficient way to take a corner? Is it the safest way to take a corner? You'll probably find that the safer way to take a corner is the least efficient way. You're not going to go knee down sliders on, but you'll definitely get your most visual representation of what's around the corner, and making yourself as visible as possible so people coming around can see you, which is what you're trying to do here as a motorcyclist. You know, it's a beautiful day, you know, you don't want to get run over, do you? So you take this corner like that, you know, as much vision as possible around the corner, and then you'll start to get yourself ready for the next corner. As you can see, your vision has opened up now, isn't it? Your viewpoint has opened up, you know. So your limit point is the limit of what your eyes can see. And as you can see, look, you've got cars in the distance, that car coming down, right? So if my limit, if I'm constantly riding in position 1 and taking this corner at the racing line, I can't see much, can I? But if I swoop outwards like that, I can see. And then if I swoop this way, so my limit point, I can see again. But if I'm continuously sort of like taking the line here, you know, this guy might not see me, that bus might not see me, because I'm crouched over behind the car, you know. Whereas like if I'm sort of like making myself a bigger target, if you like, a more obvious target, you can see, you know, if someone's coming around the corner, they're going to be able to see me now. That car seen me, trust me, yeah. Even though it's an older person, they definitely saw me. Whereas like, yeah, as you can see, that motorcyclist was not taking the racing line, he was taking a sort of a safer line, which is like that, so people can see you. It's the whole point. You're supposed to be seen on these mean streets of Devon, you know, and you're supposed to be able to try and see as much of the road as humanly possible. So that's where these limit points come in. It's not limiting you to taking racing lines like this, you know, like going around a corner and being all sort of hunched over, and you know, not having to extend your turn too much because you're going with the flow of the road. What you want to do is you want to sort of go against it sometimes, like, you know, to be able to see what's around that corner right now. Nothing. What's around this corner? Again, change your position here up to this way, and you'll be able to see this way, etc, etc, and then again swoop across like this. Also, it gives your tires a nice little even, like you won't be like squaring them off so much, I don't believe. Since I've started riding like this, I don't square my tires off as much anymore, although I do a lot of motorway miles. We're not all perfect, but you know, the idea is safety first, isn't it? Like you come across a junction, slow down, there you go, just in case someone does pull out. You've got enough time. If you're at 20 miles an hour, you know, you're going to be able to come to a stop if you slam your anchors on, for sure you will. You know, I knew it'd be this van, they just go 40 everywhere, these people. It's like 40 and a 20 please. So the idea behind this video is just giving you a little bit more insight into what it's like to use limit points and use, you know, a safer way of turning or making a corner. And it's not to do with the most efficient way, it's not the sort of way that you'd be probably taught, you know, at a race school. It's to do with the idea that making yourself as visible as possible, giving yourself enough time to react to what's around that corner there, and then again positioning yourself into another position, making it dynamic. You don't want to be static on the road, you don't want to just be planted in the middle taking corners squarely like this, you know. You don't want to be like that, you know. You're not a car, you're not a HGV, you're a motorcycle, so you want to do this. You want to know what's around the corner. If that car in front of that grey car in front of us, so the grey car in front of the grey car was that white car, if he slammed his brakes on, or she, around that corner just now, you know, if I was planted firmly behind this person here and I wasn't using my limit points, would I be able to see their brake lights hit? No, I'd see that person's brake lights hit first, the FN55 vehicle there on the registration tags. Whereas, like, if I've got my limit points set up, I can see this person. If anything, I'm looking through the other car to keep an eye on what's going on in front of me. That's the idea, because if you're riding the race line, if you like, you're just following someone else, you're using them as a barometer. But what you want to do, you ride your own ride, you know. It's like I said in my previous video, the one in Dartmoor, you want to ride your own ride for yourself, you know. And part of that is obviously taking your safety into account. So swooping across the road might look a bit strange to someone that might be behind you. They might think, what's this person doing, you know? But the idea is you're taking your best line possible for the best amount of view possible for your safest, to make the journey as safe as possible. So, you know, you're continuously looking at what's in front of you. You're continuously looking. You're not distracted by bends and trying to get the best line. You're basically looking, continuously looking for the hazard ahead, you know. It does make riding a motorcycle slightly tiring, because, you know, sometimes it doesn't allow you to zone out. If you're continuously swooping in and out for the best view possible, that means you continuously engage. Now if you start riding around long time, you're just like, you know, you're just sort of monged out, you know. You're just taking the, you know, this is the line, this is the sort of commute line. Look at this, you're just doing that. That's what you're doing, you know. You're just following, you're not taking much notice of what's going on. It starts to get a bit tedious. So, you know, but if you're continuously looking at what's ahead, getting into the right position, you know, noticing that, you know, there, he's coming to a stop up there, as you can see. Brake lights are on, brake lights should be hitting there, brake lights here, brake lights to the back. You let everyone know by showing them the back what you're doing. So that's the idea of it, you know. It keeps you engaged in the ride. It also makes you more hazard aware. You know, you're not just looking at the guy in front, you're looking at 3 people in front of you, 4 people in front of you. You're using your eyes to, you know, assess the situation at all times, you know. Now I've come around this particular corner where there's been a cyclist, so I always take this corner a little bit, you know, wide, if you like. That's how someone might see it behind you. They might be thinking, what's he doing, you know. And this is full of potholes, as you can see. You know, our Toyota in front of us is weaving in and out. So the idea of using your limit points, using your you know, using all of this to take corners at the most safest way possible is how you get ahead in this game. It's how you end up racking up thousands and thousands and thousands of miles on a motorcycle without dropping your bike, without hitting anyone, without having an accident, you know, without losing concentration. You know, motorcycles are as safe as you plan on riding them, yeah? Let's not forget that, right? Yes, you'll get incidences where people will, you know, they will hit you. They'll go into the back of you, but those are instances you can't really, like, you know, can't really predict for these, and you can't really, like, you know, mitigate for them, if you like, to use a very professional sounding word. But you can cut down your risk of being hit by someone by sticking out like a sore thumb, being a visible rider. You know, I've done a lot of miles on my bike, you know, and part of the reason why, you know, I've really, you know, been successful in riding a bike, you know, for so many miles and doing so many journeys. It's my only form of transport. It's the only way I get about. You know, I've had, you know, don't get me wrong, I've had near misses. I had one today. But it's being aware of those near misses, and if I was zoned in and, you know, rode a motorcycle like most people do ride a motorcycle, which is kind of like, you know, pretending to be Valentino Rossi or something like that, you know, it doesn't work. You've got to be visually aware, spatially aware of everything that's going on around you. You know, there's no excuses for it. You know, if you want a long career on the road, you know, one where you'll see old age and be able to look back at your motorcycling and think, you know what, that was fun. You know, you can even continue motorcycling in your old age, you know. You need the skill set to be able to do so, and the skill set is pretty simple. It's just looking where you're going, you know, letting other people know that you're there. You know, not everyone's going to see you, so it's not foolproof. I'm not saying that I'd never get in a prang or I'd never have an accident, or, you know, because you can't say stuff like that. Life, you know, gives you lemons, you know, on occasions, and there's lemons behind the wheels on occasions. So, you know, you got to take it as it comes. But your whole job as a motorcyclist, your entire job as a motorcyclist, your duty as a motorcyclist is to get home safe. You know, you're the most, or one of the most vulnerable road users. You know, you are the most vulnerable road user, you know, next to a cyclist. You're basically one and the same, but a motorcyclist probably more so, well, definitely more so, because statistically speaking, every time you throw your leg over your steel horse, you know, there's a chance you're not going to make it. You know, you're not going to make it home. You could die, you know, you could get killed very easily on a motorbike. You know, it just takes a lack of concentration, and I don't care what anyone says, you know, I don't care what people say. Oh, you know, you look at, you know, local news stories breaking on Facebook about, oh, there's been another motorcycle death, oh, motorcycle accident up Exeter, oh, motorcycle accident up, you know, Sticks, you know, Devon Live saying this and all that about, you know, poor motorcyclists. And then your comments are always like, oh, don't drivers look where they're going, oh, the standard of driving is terrible in this country. Oh, but it's not just, let's not forget, ladies and gents, it takes two to tango. Now, I'm not belittling or trying to I'm not trying to besmirch any motorcyclist that has died on the road. Yeah, I'm not saying it's their fault per se, but let's not forget there are things that we've been taught. You know, we've got tools at our disposal to make ourselves better riders and safer riders. You know, if you're absolutely hooning it around, you know, country lanes, taking corners blindly, you know, you're gonna get smashed in by a tractor. That's just life. Yeah, that's what happens, you know. And it absolutely upsets me when people start, like, you know, just thinking that motorcyclists can't be blamed for it. They can, and they should be. You know, the 90% of motorcycle deaths are caused by motorcyclists. That's not, you know, not paying attention. I'm pretty sure if they were paying attention, they'd be able to see the tractor coming out of the junction. They'd be able to see the car pulling out on them, you know. And it's like, oh yeah, but they've smashed into the motorcycle. Yeah, they've smashed in because the motorcyclist has not applied their brakes quick enough. They've not stopped quick enough. They've not let off the throttle. They've not anticipated their approach, you know. That's what's happened. If they were, you know, knocked off 10 miles an hour off, you know, their approach, they would stop in time. They just would. It's just scientific fact, ladies and gentlemen, you know. The only way someone's going to hit you coming out of a junction is if you're going absolutely bonkers speed, you know, because people cannot judge the speed of an oncoming motorcycle. They just can't. It's difficult to, because they're thin, they're skinnier, they look like they're further away, but they're not. And then all of a sudden they're there, because all of a sudden the rider is, you know, throttling it at fucking 110. You know, I've seen them. Most riders I know are careless. You know, most riders. The riders I ride with aren't. But I've seen these riders. You know, most riders that I know of, you know, that hang around in certain bike meets and all that, and, you know, they got like the squids, aren't they? They're like, they're sports bikes. If you got a, you know, Gixxer and or an R1 and you know the type. You know, you see them bombing around the countryside. It happens, and the people that say it doesn't happen are lying. All right, you know, there's a lot of, you know, it's coming across as a bit of a rant, to be fair, but there's a lot of motorcyclists that do care and do know what they're talking about and do, like, you know, but all it takes is a lapse of judgment, not checking your mirrors, not checking your speed, not approaching too fast. You know, all those things add up. You're chancing it. So the reason for this video is to remind people to bloody look where you're going, yeah, as a motorcyclist. Don't just blame it on the car drivers and be like, you know, yes, car drivers aren't looking where they're going. Car drivers aren't. But the fact that you know that as a motorcyclist and you still choose to ride like that, that makes you the problem, alright? This video's going to get some hate. I better stop. I'm going to have to heavily edit this. But yeah.